9 times in the Greek scriptures we find the rendering in part or its equivalent in most versions, and nobody appears to take any notice of the fact that in 4 places the original Greek has ek merios, out of part, and in 5, apomerosi, from part. The best commentaries notice the difference, but all of them appear to fail to indicate concordant renderings to bring over the difference into English. Thanks to the kindness of Mr. Alexander Thompson, I have been able to get a sight of the opinions on this subject in T.S. Green's Critical Notes on the New Testament, Meyer's commentary, and the Grimm-Thayer Greek lexicon, as well as the books I have myself. Collation of these has thrown on the problem some light which I wish now to pass on. The essential idea in ek meros is that it is a contrasted term in express opposition to the idea of a complete whole. Where apomeros is used, this aim to express complete contrast is not in view. The form ek meros is in the Greek scriptures confined to 1 Corinthians 12 and 13. The occurrence that displays this force most plainly is 1 Corinthians 13:12, which reads literally, "For we are observing at present through a mirror in an enigma, yet then face to face. At present I am getting to know out of part, yet then I shall be fully knowing, according as also I am fully known." Here we perceive plainly that the contrast is between full knowledge and knowledge which we are acquiring all the time, but which at present can never be complete. The same idea applies to 1 Corinthians 13:9. We are not knowing completely, we are not prophesying completely. So far, so good. It is in the next verse that difficulty arises, for here to ek meros, the out of part, is contrasted with to or to teleon, rendered in the concordant by the mature. What precisely does this mean? Now that I have been led to examine this word teleos, which means mature, more thoroughly, I realize that none of the expositors whose teaching about it is generally accepted among us has been anything like as careful and thorough as the subject demands. For instance, the concordant renders it maturity in 1 Corinthians 13:10 without any regard to the fact that there is another word, teleotes, Colossians 3:14, Hebrews 6:1 only, which does properly mean maturity. By this discordance, it effectually conceals the truth in the verse in question. A further point that is concealed in the concordant version rendering, though it is clearly set out in the way the Authorized Version or King James Version renders it, is that the Greek has the mature. The words in the Authorized Version, that which is perfect, bring out very adequately the sense of the Greek. Only in this place do we find the expression the mature, just that. In 1 John 4:18 we read, "Fear is not in that love, but the mature love is casting out the fear." And in Romans 12:2, "For you to be testing what is the will of God, the good and well-pleasing and mature." In the 14 other occurrences of teleos, there is no article written or implied. Hebrews 9:11 has the comparative form of the word more mature. So 1 Corinthians 13:10 stands alone as regards this word, and we must read, "Yet whenever that which is mature may be coming, that which is incomplete shall be discarded." What then is the difference between the mature here and the maturity, which is how both occurrences of teleotes should read? The first of the two is rendered literally. Now over all these is the love, which is the tie of the maturity. The second, wherefore, leaving the rudiments of Christ's word, we should carry on to the maturity. Here, as one might expect from the English uses of the word, Maturity means the personal state, the condition of being a mature person. The other, the mature, means whatever is mature, that which is mature. Thus we see that 1 Corinthians 13:10 has nothing whatever to do with the abstract state of maturity, with anything that happens in that respect to or within ourselves. Still less is it concerned with the notion of dispensational maturity, which some have rashly read into it, as at least one well-known writer has done. For Mr. C.H. Welch in Dispensational Truth tells us that gifts are termed partial as compared with the fullness of the present dispensation, that which is perfect. The trouble with all such assertions as this and the concordant rendering examined above is that they contain a considerable element of truth, but it is thrown out of gear and mingled with a dangerous element of error. They are made in order to support theories, not in order to conform to Scripture. By the present dispensation, Mr. Welch plainly means the dispensation which he asserts started at Acts 28:28 at the close of what he names the Pentecostal dispensation. And for him, that which is perfect is that which belongs to this, the dispensation of the mystery. Yet, what are the facts? The word teleos occurs only 4 times in the prison epistles, as many times, in fact, as in James' epistle. It occurs twice in Hebrews, thrice in Matthew, and that is not all. Mr. Welch declares that the Corinthian assembly was as babyhood is to manhood when compared with the dispensation of the mystery. How comes it then that is in 1 Corinthians 2:6 the Apostle Paul says, "Yet wisdom we are talking to the ones who are mature," and in 1 Corinthians 14:20, "Yet as to the disposition become mature." Or as these three, since Mr. Welch is writing in 1 Corinthians 13:10, are the only references to teleos in this epistle, is it not somewhat remarkable that 2 of them are exhortations to become something which, according to Mr. Welch's declared teaching, was not yet possible? Yet even that is not all. In Hebrews 5:14 we read, "Yet the solid nurture is of mature people." So there were some such among the Hebrews to whom this was written. Moreover, James 3:2 refers to mature man, and this not simply to Israelites, not simply to the 12 tribes, but actually to these in the dispersion, scattered, bereft of covenant and promises, as far separated from the glories of the prison epistles as can well be imagined for any of God's people. Why not read 1 Corinthians 13:10 without prejudice, particularly without human preconceptions, like personal maturity as in the concordant, or dispensational maturity as with so-called dispensational truth? Why not simply read it as telling us that what is mature may be coming, what is complete, partial has to be discarded? Nothing could be simpler, and certainly nothing could better illuminate the Apostle Paul's wonderful revelation in 1 Corinthians 13. That leaves only one passage containing ek meros, namely 1 Corinthians 12:27. "Yet ye are Christ's body and members out of part." It is by no means certain as yet that we have learnt all that is to be known about the usage of the word body, so I propose to defer consideration of this passage to a later paper. We may now turn to the other expression, apo or apomeros, from part, which, as remarked at the start, is used when there is no aim to express complete contrast. The Grimm Thayer Greek lexicon gives for this expression somewhat in a measure to some degree as respects a part, and even in Romans 15:15, here and there, it occurs 5 times, and we will proceed to examine each in turn. Romans 11:25 reads, "Insensitiveness in a measure has come about to Israel." Here The point is not a contrast between a part and a complete whole, but that some degree of insensitiveness has come about on Israel. The fact that insensitiveness exists and that it exists in some measure is what matters. The question of how complete it is does not arise, as it is irrelevant to the apostle's purpose. As already noted, we can render Romans 15:15 by, "Yet more daringly I write to you, here and there, as prompting you." But to be concordant, we ought to use the less striking phrase and render it by, "Yet more daringly I write to you, in a measure, as prompting you." Similarly, Romans 15:24 would read, "If ever of you first in a measure I should be finding satisfaction." Here again, here and there would probably be regarded as a better rendering and a paraphrase, but it is not so good as to justify departure from concordance, for it could not suitably be used in Romans 11:25, as it does not suit the context. In 1 Corinthians 1:14, we may read, "According as you also acknowledge us in a measure, that we are your boast." Lastly, we come to 2 Corinthians 2:5. "Now, if anyone has caused sorrow, not me has he sorrowed, but in a measure that I may not bear heavily you all." So there is no sufficient reason why we should not be both concordant and accurate in our rendering of these two forms. The careless way they are usually treated is far from a credit to translators.